For our next session, I'd like to call on stage Saurav Kumar Shah, Executive Director, RDSS Power Finance Corporation. May I request you to just be brief about your presentation?
Good afternoon. Since we have to be brief, so I'm not going with the presentation. I'll simply go ahead with the topic for the day, for this session in particular, which is Vision of Viksit Bharat and Strengthening the PSU's Role in India's Economic Growth and Development through Innovation. So as we all know, 2047 Viksit Bharat is a avowed goal of the government, and it looks upon as 100 years of independence towards attainment of certain goals for the country at a macro level, which is defined in terms of how the economy will perform, as also how the citizen's life will be shaped. For instance, even now, we are regularly running ease of living campaigns where we look at various service delivery mechanisms of government, be it electricity, be it water, be it housing, what has been attained, what has not been attained, what is the delivery time, and there is a continuous, of course, this is not entirely new, this hasn't happened just right now, but it has been happening for some time. However, now what is happening is it is more like a package, and there's a lot of convergence which is happening thanks to data. We have been talking about data in the previous session also, how the government at large, PSUs, everyone is using data, how are they keeping data safe. So now more than ever, we have data available for every kind of segment of our population, and we are able to converge data collected through various mechanisms. So we are able to bring it at one point, we are able to match that data, we are able to see whether what is being shown somewhere is the ground reality. We also have third-party mechanisms to check whether what is coming out of the data is the true picture. The various themes that we have in the Viksit Bharat is empowering of the common citizens in terms of health, education, Nari Shakti, sports, culture, creating a caring society, how good governance and security can ensure delivery for the citizen, and what will be the India's position in the world. So we have gone through phases in terms of when I come back to PSUs. So there have been phases. There was a wave of privatization that happened where a number of PSUs were slated for privatization. Some of that did happen. However, what came out of it was a new kind of PSU which was more robust, which had systems which was very similar to what their private sector counterparts are doing. So banking sector is a great example. So is insurance, the other financial services. Even in power sector, because I can speak more closely about power sector, we look after the state-run discoms, we look after the private discoms as well, and the speed of adoption of technologies has reduced by almost like 70-80%. So earlier, if a private sector discom was doing something, the state discom took a very there was considerable lag period. Now that is not happening. As soon as we see something that is happening in a private discom, we try doing it in the public discom as well. The greater role, how PSUs will continue being important to this country is not just about their absolute size, which is now very huge. In the last 10 years, the average PSU size has grown by 7 times. Some PSUs, including PFC, the growth is much more in multiples. But the more important thing is they continue having a very important social service. So even in a sector like telecom, where you see that the private telecom players are dominating, however, the public sector has a strategic role, national security, as well as there is a universal service obligation, which the public sector does well so far, and it has been doing. We see that in power sector also. There have been a wave of privatization, creation of the DF model, other models. However, wherever, you need to reach the remotest corner, certain areas. So there is no commercial viability for these projects. This is where, as a public good, we ensure that electricity reaches and the sector continues being viable. Because that loss has to be taken over by somebody, and the government is best placed to do that through the PSUs. Sectors like energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, services, these are sectors where we continue having a huge PSU footprint, and for the probable future, for the near future, at least in the Vision 2047, PSU's role will continue being important. Beyond this, in the last 1 or 2 years, we have seen there has been a lot of excitement about the PSUs in the markets also. So the markets also don't react without reason. There is a reason that the markets are reacting in a certain manner. The PSU index has gained almost 335% in the last 4 years. Much of it is because of now what has happened is the PSUs that continue being there, they are better governed. I mean, there is more corporate governance, and as a PSU shifts from being a mini Ratna to a Navratna to a Maharatna, there is greater flexibility. So this is where people draw their confidence from, because you are able to take more decision making, which is in terms of creation of assets, wealth. So at the same time, I mean, that is what gives confidence to the markets also. Another thing that is happening in the last 5 years, 10 years is the absolute growth in capital expenditure. So the capex growth, as the gentleman before me also from the railways, I mean, they also showed how the network has been growing. So all this has happened much into the, I mean, mostly into the public sector. There is a lot of private sector participation also in power sector. For instance, in generation in the last 10 years, the majority of growth has come from private sector, especially when it comes to renewable energy. So we are seeing both roles of public sector, where there is a viability challenge, where there is a public good situation, where there is a social good situation, the public sector is involved, backed by the government budget lines. And where, I mean, you have a thriving private sector, the public sector acts as a price signal, as a market signal. I mean, it creates these signals and it lets private sector play their role, while also ensuring that the public sector role goes beyond the companies, of course, being regulators. We have other places in the sector where we cannot do away with the public sector. So this kind of continued capital expenditure and the rate at which we are growing for the next 15 years, 20 years, we see this kind of capex is required. For power in specific, definitely yes. The kind of numbers we have, we are currently consuming something like 1300 odd units a year, which is just 1/3 of the global average. So, and this is a continually growing population, an aspirational population. So even to reach the global average at the current population levels, that will mean almost 3 times the network, not just in generation, transmission, distribution also. And the greatest challenge will come when you create distribution networks, because now, I mean, most of these distribution networks will have to be created in cities itself, where there is already a substantial ROW issue. The right of way is simply not available. You have created assets. So the smart solutions will be that you augment capacity without taking up more space, without creating more lines. So the same lines will have to carry more and more load. So for that, usage of better materials, more R&D, I think this is where we require a lot of private sector investment. The networks might continue being operated by the government or the public-owned discoms, but the material has to come from the industry, from the manufacturing side, where you have to continue doing some kind of research so that you are able to solve these ROW issues. Price in itself will not be the final issue. Of course, you cannot take away economics out of this entirely. However, if we are able to offer solutions which are which take care of these hurdles in terms of geography and line length, so I think a lot of cost consideration can also be factored in if you are able to give a proper line. Besides these obvious, I mean, infra needs that we are doing, PSUs like Power Finance Corporation, our subsidiary REC, we also have a lot of social role. We run access insure programs by discoms, so we ensure that the discoms are reaching every last household in the country. So there was a scheme called Saubhagya, where we ensured that every house in the country was lit up by some kind of electrical network, be it on-grid, off-grid. Off-grid, you can see there is a great push coming in terms of rooftop solar, which is in many ways, it is also democratizing the process of power generation. It is giving the consumer a role in his own consumption, in his own generation also. We are bringing more tools in hands of people so that they're able to understand their power consumption, understand their bills better. Of course, I mean, you will continue hearing about all kinds of news items where somebody has been handed out a big bill and all, but all this is a process of evolution. Our systems are getting better, we are engaging better billing solutions. But when it comes to handling big data, the challenge that public sector also faces that so far the model has been largely outsourcing. I mean, if we need a new ERP, we'll want somebody to come in and do it and maintain it also for a couple of years. So that is where the challenge is, because if we don't have in-house capacities, this model doesn't work. So for instance, in smart meters also, we have a model, a DB foot model, where somebody will come in and for the next 10 years, they take care of that system. They invest initially, they take care of the system. And now, I mean, these are new ideas for our sector also, that we are governing them by SLAs. So if the uptime is not 99% or 99.5%, the vendor will not get paid. The invoices will be adjusted to the service level agreements. So we have strict service level agreements whenever we are creating these models, DB foot model or boot model, anywhere in the power sector. So all in all, I mean, there is a fair share of challenges when it comes to how we'll be ensuring availability of power to every last user in the country, not just availability, but also quality power. There are no power cuts. The voltage levels are what it should be. The tail end voltage should be within guidelines. So we are looking at bifurcating feeders, trifurcating feeders. If the feeder length is too long, the power will be supplied, but the quality will not be what we desire. So citizens have a right to not just power, but also quality power and at affordable rates. It cannot be, the economics also has to be there. We cannot make a unit of power reach a level where it is no longer viable for the consumer, not just for the consumer, even for the CNI consumers, the commercial consumers, industrial consumers, because ultimately, just like transport, power is an input cost for every industry, for every manufacturing process. So if you price it too high, that doesn't work. So currently we are seeing a lot of RE influx where prices are coming low, but there is a challenge in RE also because of the timeliness of power. It's not consistent power. You don't have 24 hours. So there are attempts to solve it by battery storage, pump storage. But what we look ahead at next 20 years, 22 years, I mean, which is the time frame of this discussion, that power, transport, these are going to be increasingly, increasing. I mean, they'll increase at the clip they have been increasing for the last 5-10 years, maybe even more than that. And for that, public sector will continue having a role, whether be it in power sector. I think railways is anyways, I mean, a behemoth. So railways will continue being very important. In the transport sector, at least in the building of roads, there's a lot of private participation, but at the end of the day, the linchpin has to be some kind of public sector players. So it will be important that we continue investing in talent in public sector. We try getting the best talent from the campus, from the market, so that we are able to take care of these challenges. Otherwise, the growth story that we are looking for will not happen in the manner it should happen. So the Indian story, the growth story of this country and the role of PSUs, I mean, they will be interwoven into each other, and it is our role, everyone who's here, and that we continue serving in the manner we do, and we take a lot of private sector support. However, the PSU role will be there, so we should be ready for that, and our systems and our processes should be up to date, and we should not have any kind of, cannot have any handicaps. We cannot say that we are government, so we cannot do certain things. We have to be competitive, we have to be cost effective also while we are doing our services. So thank you and have a good day.
Ask Gopi to just hand over a token of appreciation.